developing.
Well, we got to that point. Now, where do we go next? And I would jokingly say, well, we'll put the Bible to music or something like that, you know. And that's when we made that decision, because in reflection, we'd actually then sold 2 million records. So we had at least 1 million fans. You know, you didn't think about it at the time, but there were 1 million people waiting for your next album. And we didn't think about that. I just thought about doing something very downward progressive. You know, we've been called progressive. Well, let's do something progressive. And that's when we jumped into the Topographic Ocean period, which...
that was the double album, of course.
Double album, 4 20 minutes of music, which were actually 4 30 minutes of music, but you couldn't put 30 minutes on vinyl. It wouldn't stick. It would just fade and get crankly at the end. So we had to edit it all down to 22 minutes each side. And they were based on the Vidas, which is the revealing, the remembering, the ancient, and the ritual of life. It's very, very simple, basic understanding that as we live, everything is revealed. And then as we're living, we remember, eventually as we get older, we remember the ancient and why we're here. And then the ancient, of course, is the ancient that we don't understand and we don't know much about. We're living in local history now anyway, playing this amazing game. And then we move into the ritual of life, and through music, it was always this incredible drum pounding thing that we had to go into. It was like everything that you'd ever dreamed of putting into music, you put it all into this album. And of course, it had some incredible points of confusion, because it was such a big undertaking. It wasn't that we were all on the same page. We weren't. I thought we were. Me and Steve were on the same page. Chris was on the same page. Alan was on the same. Rick wasn't. But eventually, Eddie wasn't. And it was like we weren't all on the same page. So there wasn't that elusive harmony. So the album, it in fact became something that was at that point in time for the band a big, wonderful chaos.
Sorry.
No. It was wonderful chaos. It was like, I thought this was it. And then we actually sent tapes to Radio Luxembourg, and it was going to be played live on Luxembourg that night, a week before it was released. And it was going to be played on Luxembourg at 12 o'clock, and we're all sitting around the radio, and they'd sent blank tapes. So I think it was, what was that Canadian DJ? Kid Jensen was putting it on. He's talking about, now this is the new album from, yes, one of our biggest bands in the world, and it's Tales from Topographic Oceans. Well, here it is. Thank you very much. Nothing. And that was basically it. That was basically.
You hadn't checked tapes before?
Well, no, somebody take them over.
But we get sabotaged.
I don't know, but I just know that it wasn't meant to be so amazing. It was meant to be a fight, and that's what it became, an emotional fight, because we went on tour, we played 4 sides and Close to the Edge, and that was the tour. The fans, you know, sort of came in their thousands, and we're playing 4 sides of an album they haven't heard, plus Close to the Edge. And they, a lot of them wanted Roundabout. Or, you know.
Because you did the rainbow.
And you and I, you know.
Did the rainbow, didn't you, John?
Yeah. But it was like pushing a giant stone monolith up a mountain for about a year, you know. And I fought about it on every level, emotionally, physically, and mentally, and just went crazy because, you know, you've decided to commit yourself to this great idea of doing something different and something very, what you feel is the moment, very powerful. And you can see it being torn apart, slowly but surely. And Rick left the band, he just couldn't perform it. After a year he'd had enough, you know. I don't blame him because he couldn't lock into where I was. He couldn't lock into the idea. But thankfully, 25 years later, we started performing it again, and it sounds more beautiful than ever. So we started performing the first and the last piece, Revealing and Ritual, when we reformed as a band in '95. And we started, and I said to the guys, you know, if we get together, we've got to do at least a couple of pieces of Topographic. And Rick said, okay, you're driving me crazy, but I'll do it, you know. And we all, you know, I said, we can edit it down. And Steve said, no way, I won't even touch it unless we play it properly. I said, okay. You know, I was eager to help anybody to make it work, you know. So we performed it, and even in rehearsal, I just knew it was beautiful. And we started performing it around the world 25 years later, and it was amazing to play, and still is. And I was very frightened because my wife Jane, I just met her and fallen in love, and we were rehearsing and all that, and I didn't want her to hear it because I'd never played her that, because she knew Roundabout and All Good People, a couple of commercial songs. She didn't know what Yes was. And then we met and I fell in love, and I just kept her away from Topographic. And then I found her playing it very loud one day. And she said, I just love this music. What were you doing at this time in your life, you know? I said, can you turn it down, please? Because I still can't hear the original. I can't hear it. I don't know why. It's just something about it. It's just hard for me.
You didn't want to play the original album?
Well, I don't like hearing it that much. Because I can hear all the reasons it didn't work. But to perform it on stage, and I like the new recordings, of course, and to perform it on stage is such a dream. And it's so good. It's such great music. And you realize, well, thank the gods that 25 years later I'm still alive and still able to perform this music. And there's a crowd out there who want to hear it, you know. There's a great audience. And most of the people that come to see the band these days are the ones that really loved it in the first place. If they're still enjoying the band, you know. Because when we were doing that tour, like, I think it was like 10 years ago, we were drawing in 5,000 and 7,000 or 8,000 people. But you knew these people knew who we were. There was no kidding around. When we were famous in the mid-70s, half of the audience loved us, and the other half thought they loved us, you know, because we were hip, or it was important to love Yes, or something like that.
What were the crowd sizes then in the 70s?
Anything, well, it's regular about 15, 20, regular sort of 3 or 4 shows at the Madison Square Garden sort of thing. That's 20,000 a show. But you go into this wonderful energy force, and you just played your music. And we moved on from Topographic, and then we got...
You had to explain the title, though, you know, what Topographic Oceans actually meant, which was the depth, I suppose, of life.
Well, it was more to do with the idea that, well, I'm working on it still, that we don't know much about why we're here, so much about what the world truly is. Topography is sort of the design of the world and the understanding of the highs and lows and the mountains and so on. That's called topography. And the oceans is still topography because you're in the depths of the ocean. There's not much known about the depths of the oceans and stuff. And I was just into that phrase, tales from, because it's a sort of contradiction of it, topographic oceans. The idea that the ley lines, I'm still working on the ley lines, this new music I'm doing.
Mountains under the oceans.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the ley lines are these crystal streams all around the world. They're called grids. And I was learning about that at that time, you know, I was very into some of the geometry and stuff. And the sacred Rosicrucian and all the, what has now become very well known through Da Vinci Code. All that information, I was studying all that at that time.